There was once a race car so low you could literally trip over it. This isn't CGI, this is real. And one man built it from cardboard and plywood in his garage. And the craziest part? The same brain that built this knee-high monster later made ugly little Japanese commuter cars humiliate American muscle, and then dethroned Porsche prototypes for 4 straight years. One man, 3 completely different racing worlds, 0 fame, until now. His name is Trevor Harris, the ultimate motorsport visioneer, a self-taught genius who didn't just design cars, he redesigned the laws of physics, packaging, suspension, and rules across 5 decades and 3 completely different racing worlds. Most people have never heard his name, but every time you see a boxy Datsun smoke a Mustang or a Nissan GTP destroy Porsche at Daytona, you're looking at Trevor Harris's fingerprints. This is the story of the ultimate unsung hero in motorsport, a man who started with junkyard parts and a Boeing missile electronics job and quietly shaped modern racing more profoundly than many household names. The insane shadow. Trevor Harris's journey began in the late 1950s as a highly motivated teenager in Seattle. He had a knack for turning cast-offs into gold. He'd buy junk cars for pennies, strip them, sell parts for cash, and use the money to fund his next project. His first standout creation was a heavily modified 1937 Lincoln Zephyr street rod he dubbed the Trevari. While still in high school, Harris landed a remarkable gig as a test technician in Boeing's R&D department for guided missile electronics. As a teen, he built an array of street and track machines, culminating in the beautiful Harris Special, a clean, purposeful design that showed his growing talent for aesthetics and function. Harris's first professional race car gig came in the mid-1960s with Jerry Grant's 1964 Bardol Special, a heavily modified Lotus 19 chassis. This wasn't designed from scratch, but it gave him hands-on experience with high-level open-wheel and sports racing tech, honing his skills in chassis setup, aero basics, and race prep. By 1969, the Can-Am series was the wildest era in motorsport history. No rules limiting engine size, turbochargers, aerodynamics, or pretty much anything else. Unlimited spending, unlimited innovation, unlimited danger. It was the perfect playground for a thinker like Trevor Harris. Harris, then in his early 30s, had already moved to California and opened a small race shop in Costa Mesa. There, he dreamed of slashing aerodynamic drag by minimizing frontal area. His big idea was to reduce frontal area by a staggering 35% compared to conventional Can-Am cars. My initial concept was to build a very small car and use a turbocharged Corvair flat-6 engine, as short and narrow as possible, Harris later recalled. I wanted to cut down the frontal area in all directions. Money was tight, but opportunity knocked when Don Nichols, a savvy racing entrepreneur, founded Advanced Vehicle Systems with the explicit goal of dominating Can-Am. Nichols saw Harris's sketches and mock-ups, loved the vision, and made one key tweak: swap the compact Corvair flat-6 for a fire-breathing Chevrolet Big Block, a 427 monster pushing well over 700 horsepower. Harris agreed and dove in. He constructed a full-scale mock-up from cardboard and plywood right in his shop. He positioned a Chevy engine on the floor and built the entire form around it, proving the packaging was possible. The result was cartoonishly low. Front wheels just 10 inches in diameter, custom Firestone tires 11 inches wide, rears 12 inches in diameter, 16 inches wide. The bodywork hugged the ground so tightly that the car was literally knee-high, earning nicknames like Lowline, Tiny Tire, or Knee-High. Space constraints forced wild solutions. Old-school friction dampers instead of hydraulic shocks, tiny inboard disc brakes squeezed into the mini wheels, massive air scoops funneling cooling to rear-mounted radiators, and planned rising air brakes to manage predicted speeds north of 200 miles per hour while adding downforce. The driver position was the real mind-bender. To keep the silhouette razor-thin, the driver lay almost flat, splayed out like a human floorboard. A tiny 9-inch steering wheel sat between the knees. Pedals hinged sideways. Clutch was hand-operated for starts only. Only the top of the helmet poked above the bodywork. Photos from the era show Harris himself crammed into the mock-up to demonstrate the position, with Nichols standing proudly beside it. The mock-up caused a sensation. Road and Track featured it on the cover of their August 1969 issue, calling it the most radical Can-Am yet and hyping it as the future. One enthusiast, Jim Bartell, recalled the shock of the shadow in Road and Track. When I saw that cover, that was it. I've still got the magazine. George Fomer, one of the drivers who tested it, took one look and demanded changes. The extreme reclined position was terrifying, but the potential was undeniable. When the AVS Shadow Mark I, often called the low line or Trevor Harris Shadow, hit the track at the 1970 Can-Am, it shocked everyone. At Motorsport, it clocked 194 miles per hour, faster than the McLaren pole car, proving the low-drag concept worked. But Can-Am was brutal. Overheating issues plagued the radical package, and the car only ran one season as a prototype. The SCCA banned movable aero like the planned air brakes, following FIA rules. At Saint-Jovite, Quebec, the Shadow car retired after 13 laps from heat issues. To add injury to the insult, the trailer carrying the lone car collided with a stolen vehicle driven by a drunk driver, wrecking it beyond quick repair. The Mark I never raced again in period. Harris, whose final paycheck bounced, walked away from the team immediately. The Commuter car slayer. Just when you think Trevor Harris couldn't get crazier, he pivoted to something even more improbable, making ugly little Japanese commuter cars dominate American road racing. Enter Peter Brock's Brock Racing Enterprises and the Datsun 510. In the early 1970s, the SCCA Trans Am series had a 2.5-liter under 2.5 class where small sedans battled it out. Brock, the legendary designer behind the Shelby Cobra Daytona Coupe, assembled a killer team including suspension wizard Trevor Harris. Harris brought his holistic magic to the 510, revolutionary suspension geometry that transformed the car's handling. He optimized camber curves, roll centers, and anti-dive characteristics so the tires stayed planted like glue through corners. What was essentially a boxy, affordable family sedan suddenly gripped like a purpose-built racer. The results were stunning. BRE Datsun 510s, piloted by drivers like John Morton, dominated the 2.5 Trans Am series in 1971 and 72, winning championships and slaying bigger, more powerful American monsters from Ford, Chevy, and IMSA. These grocery getters weren't just competitive, they were untouchable in their class, proving Harris's genius extended far beyond extreme aero tricks. Same brain, different rules, same total dominance. Harris also contributed to BRE's Datsun TO40Z efforts, helping secure National C production championships in 1970 and 71. From Can-Am monster to compact coupes, he adapted seamlessly. The Porsche killer. Fast forward to the 1980s, IMSA GTP was the new frontier, high-tech prototypes with massive turbos, ground effects, and endless budgets. Porsche's 962 had an iron grip on endurance racing, winning year after year. In 1987, Nissan Motorsports manager Cass Kastner hired Harris as chief designer and trackside engineer for the electromotive Nissan GTP program. Starting with a Lola chassis base, Harris quickly transitioned the team to fully in-house designs. First, the ZX Turbo, with its potent twin-turbo V6, then the Evolution NPT90. Harris handled the chassis, suspension tuning, aero packaging, and rules exploitation. He integrated Electromotive's pioneering electronic fuel injection and data logging for reliability. The result is a 4-year dynasty from 1988 to 1991. Jeff Brabham won back-to-back IMSA drivers' titles in '88 and '89. The team took the manufacturer's crown in '89, and they broke Porsche's stranglehold with wins at Sebring, Daytona, and beyond. The NPT 90, with its sleek lines and massive power, up to 950 horsepower in unrestricted form, became the Porsche killer. The hidden legacy. Trevor Harris never stopped. Beyond the Big Three, he designed championship-winning Can-Am cars like the VDS 001 for Jeff Brabham and the Gallus car for Al Unser Jr. He penned the Frisbee Can-Am machines and even contributed to the Shadow F1 car and built Pikes Peak-conquering four-wheel drive Nissan trucks. He created a short-track Yamaha motorcycle setup for Kenny Roberts and patented variable speed transmissions still used in industry today. From his early days modifying a 1937 Lincoln Zephyr street rod as a teen, through Boeing, junkyard builds, and a 60-plus year career, Harris mastered thinking holistically. Aero plus suspension plus driver ergonomics plus rules interpretation equals unbeatable packages. Now in his late 80s, he's still sharp, sharing stories in interviews about those wild days. Yet he remains criminally under-recognized. No massive Wikipedia page, no endless YouTube documentaries. Just a quiet influence on generations of racing tech. Here's the part nobody talks about. Trevor Harris's Boeing missile electronics background gave him something no other 1970s designer had: obsessive data discipline. That's why the Nissan GTPs didn't just have power. They had the first reliable electronic fuel injection and telemetry logging in the series. He literally brought missile precision to the track. That same packaging obsession is why modern hypercars and even Formula One ground effect feel like spiritual descendants of the Shadow Mark I. He was thinking about frontal area and driver ergonomics in 1969 the way teams do in 2026. The man wasn't just ahead of his time, he was building the rule book everyone else still follows, while staying completely invisible. Decades after its short and chaotic racing career, the strange little Shadow Mark I found a new life. One of the car's biggest admirers, Jim Bartell, eventually acquired the actual Mark I that had raced and a second car that was essentially a recreation of the original prototype concept. The recreation had been assembled under the supervision of Don Nichols himself. According to Bartell, Don had put it together with every bit he could find of the original concept. Many bits were taken off because they didn't work that well. Bartell even recreated the air brake system that had never actually been installed on the car during its original racing era. He also attempted to recreate the bizarre bus-style steering wheel position, where the tiny steering wheel sat between the driver's knees. Today, the Shadow Mark I survives as one of the strangest machines ever built for the Can-Am Challenge Cup. Modern drivers who have tested it say the experience feels like driving something from another timeline of motorsport history. British sports car driver Kyle Tilley became the only driver to successfully finish a race in the restored Mark I. The car now runs modern hydraulic dampers instead of the primitive friction dampers used in the original design. But even with those improvements, the car still feels as radical as it did in 1970. Low, tiny, and unbelievably strange. Drop your answer below. Which Trevor Harris creation is craziest? The trip-over Shadow, the grocery-getter Datsun Slayer, or the Porsche-killing GTP? Would a car this low even be legal in modern racing? The first 500 comments get pinned. Let's make sure Trevor finally gets the recognition he deserves. This is Paul at Rare Car Stories. See you down the road.